Hello again. Here we are for another live stream. So I'm Victoria Jones from Satoshi's page, and I'm doing a series of interviews in the run up to the event that we've got coming up in Nottingham, the Bitcoin Fest, which is going to be on the 6th of April. This is going to be the fourth interview that I've done, and we're now into interviewing the speakers. We've done a couple of interviews with the organizers, and today I've got with me Ed, who is also known as the Renegade Investor. His Twitter handle is SharkyBit. Now, I'm proud to say I've actually known Ed for a few years now. I think we first met at CoinFest in 2019. But before that, I knew about him because I was watching some of his awesome videos on YouTube. He does really great explainers on how what's going to happen with the Bitcoin price, and some great parody videos as well that were really entertaining. And so he pops up every now and then in order to entertain us, but perhaps not as often as we'd like. But we're really fortunate that for our event, he's going to be traveling all the way up to Nottingham in order to be one of our speakers. So thank you so much, Ed, for agreeing to come and speak with us. And so what's you're going to be the content of your talk? What are you hoping to talk to us about at this event?
Yeah. Thanks for the kind words, and I can't believe how many years it is since. Like I've met
Goes
certain
fast.
people in the Bitcoin space. It flies, doesn't it? And yeah, thanks for all the work you're doing for the event as well. It's amazing. And
Oh,
but yeah, my
thank you.
talk, hopefully, what I'm going to be talking about is why Bitcoin is still the ultimate investment in 2024. Because I think from the outside looking in, I think one of the biggest questions I would be asking myself if I was new to the Bitcoin space right now is, why would I invest in Bitcoin if the price has already gone up so much? So,
Mm.
all you ever hear about nowadays is, how Bitcoin has been record-breaking investment, best investment in human history. And if I was literally new to the Bitcoin space, I'd be thinking, well, hang on a minute. And I think this is a just question. Like, it doesn't matter if it was Bitcoin or any other asset. I'd be thinking to myself, why would I invest in this if it's already gone up so much? So the whole
Yeah.
point of my talk is going to be explaining all the reasons why Bitcoin, even in 2024, is still the absolute ultimate investment that you can make right now, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a really valid point. I mean, I first got involved in Bitcoin in 2016, and I remember telling my parents about it. We were around the kitchen table, and I said, "Oh, you need to get one of these things, you know." And my mum said, "So how much is one?" And I said, £400. She's like, "Oh, that's expensive." And of
Yeah.
course, now look at it, and it's exactly the same kind of thing. And of course, when it started, there were so many comments about it being Beanie Babies, and you could buy one Bitcoin for $1, and so people are just looking at this aghast, going, it's got to lose value at some point, but it doesn't. It just keeps going up, and so yeah, I completely agree with you. I think there's always going to be a call for someone explaining that. And I can't think of a better person to do that, because the videos you used to have were amazing. And I think you've still got your channel, haven't you? It's still possible for people to go back and see some of those. So some of the videos in
Absolutely.
2017, because 2017 saw a huge rise in the Bitcoin price, and I know that one of your videos was around then, because I was looking at it. Because you do feel nervous. You kind of think, and even if it goes down a little bit, chances are it's not going to be long before it goes up again. So you're constantly looking at the price thinking, oh, have I done the right
Yeah.
thing?
And yeah, exactly. And hindsight is 2020, isn't it? Like when you look back and think, man, I actually looked at some of my first buys the other day on Mt. Gox, and I was thinking to myself, why didn't I sell a kidney to buy some Bitcoin? Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
and I think the thing is, even now, anecdotally, whenever I'm out and about and I'm talking to people, it's amazing how many people still think like Bitcoin is just a pure bubble.
Hmm.
Even still using the Bitcoin terminology, it's such a powerful word in finance that you say the word bubble and everyone has a massive fear reaction. And when you actually look at the reality, and actually it's another funny thing, I was looking through my old videos on my channel the other day, and I had a video from 2016 which was like why Bitcoin is still the best investment. And it's funny, like I've gone full circle, and like 8 years later I can still make the video why Bitcoin is
Hmm.
still the best investment. And it's like, and the funny thing is, when I actually started doing my new video and looking and doing a course that I'm writing, I actually looked into like the adoption metrics for Bitcoin, both in terms of the amount of people that are actually have bought Bitcoin, or the holders
Hmm.
of Bitcoin, which is somewhere between, I think, about 325 to 400 million people. And
Wow.
both in terms of that and in terms of the amount of capital invested, which, even at the current highs was 1.4 trillion. on both of those metrics, Bitcoin is still tiny. It's crazy to think after all the rises we've had, the Bitcoin is still tiny. And I think that's what I really want to get across in this talk. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that would be amazing. I'm certainly looking forward to hearing that, because it doesn't matter how long you've been in Bitcoin, there will always be that anxiety, especially because it's new. And again, in comparison to it being a bubble, the trouble is the bubbles that we know about in history, like the tulip bubble and the South Sea bubble, they were bubbles based on stocks and shares. This is a completely different asset, and if you don't understand that,
Yeah.
you're not even looking at the argument from the right foundation. So it's no wonder you don't get it.
Yeah, that's a great comment, actually. That is a great comment, because yeah, you get it nowadays. Like even I saw the other day saying it's a tulip bubble, but it's like if you're comparing a decentralized open source network to a tulip bulb, like you're coming from the wrong background. I think for me, the thing that I'm comparing it to is the adoption from the internet. And in terms of
Yep.
where we are in the adoption compared to the internet, we're still about the year 2000 before the explosion in social media, and where people were
Yeah.
still really only just getting to terms with it. And that completely lines up really with where we are in Bitcoin, because at 8% global adoption, we don't enter the early adoption phase until about 15%. So on the
Wow.
S-curve adoption model, which measures like the adoption of an innovation on a global scale by all different populations around the world. The early majority phase, where a technology goes mainstream, is from 15 to 34% of global adoption around the world. Yeah, and at the moment we're still at 8% in Bitcoin. So in terms of that, it's crazy to think just how much more capital and users can come into this space, into Bitcoin, and how high the high price can go. Sometimes even like being in Bitcoin for over a decade, it's almost surreal how much capital it could attract. It's almost like it's too good to be true. But when you actually run the numbers, you think, no, this is legit. This is actually where we could go.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you're so hot on the numbers, being able to, come on an interview and kind of give people those facts and figures, because there are some people who literally won't take action on anything unless you give them those sorts of metrics. So again, in some of the videos that you've done, you explain that really well, and you really seem to have understood and nailed those dimensions, which again really helps to communicate it really well. So yeah, fantastic. And on top of that, are you going to be telling people about this new course you're putting together? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah,
Or is
so
it not
for the
ready yet?
last no, I've actually finished it, but I'm just debating whether to release it in chunks, to be honest, because I think they make great videos by themselves, and then I might amalgamate it all at the end. And I think that
I
might be a
see.
better way,
Okay.
because I think altogether it could be about 8 hours, and I think long form content is not quite as accessible nowadays as it used to be, because of so much content, and for people to sit down, they really it really does take a lot. People are really busy lives, and so that I'm kind of debating whether to do that or not. I was going to say the other thing I was going to talk about during the talk is, as well as sort of the overall sort of major sort of global view of Bitcoin, I'm going to go into this cycle and look at where we are in the cycle, because even now I've had friends contacting me as we approach the last all-time high, saying, is this where we sell? Because obviously this is where it got to last time before it fell down.
Yeah.
So a big part of my work, I'm going to talk about the 5 stages of a Bitcoin market cycle, and just go through each one to say that, look, we're out of the 4 stages in the bull market, we're probably only still in stage 2, which is the sort of slow build up after breaking out of the accumulation range, where things bottom out after a bear market. And after that, we get stage 3 where prices escalate, and stage 4 where prices go parabolic. And I think we still got a long way to go for that. I think historically as well, I think we're going to break the the theme of less returns each time, every bull market. The fact that we've had it's been less returns.
Diminishing returns, you mean? Diminishing
That's
returns.
the word. That's exactly the word I was looking for. So I think this cycle is actually going to break that cycle of diminishing returns, because
right, okay. And why is that?
Yeah.
Why is
just
that?
for the fact that I think the ETF market has really blown open the market to hundreds of trillions in capital. And it's kind of a similar theme to what happened back in 2013 when Mt. Gox came online. 2012, and that was the first time where Bitcoin was opened up to a marketplace where more and more people could actually put capital in. And comparatively, it's like that, but even bigger. So whereas
Mm,
that opened up the world to, a lot of capital, this is like hundreds of trillions. So I think
mm,
respectively, it could have that same effect, but on a much bigger scale yet again. So I
yeah,
think that's a dynamic we could see this time, and I think that's what could end the diminishing return cycle. But obviously, I don't know that for sure. All I'm doing is speculating on what's happening. Like I think
yeah.
anyone that tries to tell you how high the price can go is lying to you, because I've seen
We
every
just don't
prediction
know.
from about I've seen every prediction from about 200,000 to a million, like
Yeah,
somewhere in that
yeah.
region. I mean, it's. I mean, you just got to see what price action does at the time. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because of course it was the opening up of Mt. Gox that made it go high, but then of course it was the collapse of Mt. Gox that made it break again. And of course, one of the things we've seen in Bitcoin, it's normally one of these centralized institutions breaking that that's normally responsible for the price going down, which
Yeah.
is the only concern. And really, yeah, I think that's probably the thing that's holding Bitcoin back at the moment. People are still so wedded to the idea of how things have worked. I mean, Bitcoin doesn't actually need any of these centralized organizations, but the moment one of them does, which stops, access, and also there are a lot of people that we know who, it used to be the case that you could buy Bitcoin whenever you wanted, but of course the banks are really now clamping down on how people can get access
Mm.
to it. So there are definitely constrictions in the funnel. But yeah, I completely agree with you. I think once you understand the fundamentals, I think that's what a lot of people are relying on. It's normally something else in the fiat system that will slow it down. And I think if it weren't for some of those things, it would be a lot higher already. It's normally some kind of catastrophe on that scale that
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
could
for sure.
bring it down.
But it's like, but I really think like a lot of stuff is clearing away, and I think
Mm,
like, and just to clarify, like, I don't even think an ETF is the best way to buy Bitcoin. I still recommend that you buy
mm,
Bitcoin and hold it yourself as a bearer asset on a
mhm,
hardware wallet or something like that. I think it gives you exposure to the price gains, but at some point, you've got to make that transition to actually hold Bitcoin. I think at that point, you're going to take a taxable event by
mhm,
cashing out of the ETF and then having to buy Bitcoin. So ultimately, I think, yeah, for most people, I think it's much better to buy it as a bearer asset, just to be clear on that. I
mm,
was going to say the other thing I'd like to go into during the talk is going to be how Bitcoin is going to demonetize every other major asset class as well. So as well as
mm,
looking at how much money there is in each asset class that could go into Bitcoin, is also looking at just why that money is going to flow into Bitcoin. So I think, yeah, for every single major asset class, I'm going to go into the reasons why Bitcoin is going to demonetize its assets, because, like we saw with the central banks driving down interest rates by buying bonds for the last 10 years, is that everyone went looking for gains in every other single asset because they couldn't get a gain just by simply holding their money in their bank account, because it was
mm,
just getting destroyed by inflation. So, people went into property, into stock markets, into the bond market. And now I think because Bitcoin has come along and it's going to create that saving mechanism again that
mhm,
people have been looking for, the money's going to flow right back out into Bitcoin, especially as I personally believe the return on investment is going to be greater. So,
mhm.
the overheads for holding Bitcoin are less, the returns are greater. So it's like, why would you hold these other assets when you can hold the best? It's
I know, but it's just
yeah.
such a difficult thing for people to get their head around, especially property investors, because of course property has been, the hotshot investment for the last 40 years. But of course, by the time everyone's jumping on that bandwagon, it's that kind of bubbles over, and trying to convince some of them, that this is the new thing. It's really hard to, get them to go some of those ideas. But I completely agree with you. I think having someone explain that really clearly is just going to be brilliant. And so, I'm so glad you're coming up and giving us an opportunity to hear you explain all that, because I think it's fantastic. And for those of you who can't make it, make sure you go and watch Ed's videos on the Renegade Investor channel, because yeah, they're definitely worth watching and very entertaining. Before we go on to the next question, it's good to see Jay's made a comment saying great initiative this session series. So thank you. I think that's probably the first comment we've had on this series of live streams. So it's really nice to see that we're getting some engagement. So thank you, Jay, for that. Um,
I actually met Jay in El Salvador.
yeah. Oh, had you not met him before?
No, so we actually met up. Yeah, I did the Bitcoin pilgrimage to El Salvador, and yeah, we actually met
Oh,
up and
fantastic.
had a really good
How
chat
was
and met his
that?
family. So yeah, it was really good. Yeah, lovely. It's like Yeah, so good to meet him. It's just like, and it's weird. Whenever you meet Bitcoiners, it's like you've known them for years. It's
Yeah.
even if it's the first time meeting them, there's just some connection that you're both on the same page, and you get, yeah, it's a really good connection.
Yeah. And how was El Salvador? I mean, I'm sure some of our audience would be interested in hearing about that.
It was amazing. I absolutely loved the country. Like from the moment you
Mhm.
get off the plane, like even the border staff are incredibly friendly to you, which is so refreshing, you know? Rather than getting
Yeah.
looked at as if you're the worst terrorist in the world every time you cross a border. Even the border staff are friendly, and then everyone I met in restaurants, taxis, all so friendly, and they were just so optimistic, you know? Like I think
Yeah.
for them coming out of a period where they couldn't even leave their house after 6 o'clock, and this is a conversation I had
Mm.
with a taxi driver. He said, people couldn't even leave their houses after 6 o'clock at night because you just run the risk of genuinely the risk of getting killed and ambushed. So
Wow.
for them, I think, that's where the economy is booming. Not only is it the fact you got tourism pouring in, but the fact that the economy can stay open much later.
Mhm.
It's just honestly, the whole country seems amazing, and you can see a lot of development going on. I think, yeah, the speed at which that country is going to develop is going to be absolutely incredible. Like,
Yeah.
and the money they're going to make, and I think they're the first step in another thing that I'm going to talk about at Bitcoin Fest, which is the game theory, which is not only are we seeing corporate game theory with MicroStrategy, which is setting a standard for every company in the world should actually be thinking about diversifying their cash reserves into something that isn't getting inflated away. It's like, for me, being in Bitcoin so long, it's a complete no-brainer that you've got 13 of the top companies in America have $1 trillion in cash, and it's like, why on earth would you be holding any type of cash in this environment when
Yeah.
Bitcoin is this good, it's getting adoption? So I think that's the amazingness of MicroStrategy and creating that corporate game theory that's going to like every single corporate's going to be looking at MicroStrategy now going, why aren't we replicating this? This is, what their stock price has gone up, 400% recently. I
Mm.
mean, it's a masterful move, and I think for everyone who's been in Bitcoin for a while, it was like a no-brainer. But it's still, it takes a lot of kahunas to actually go and deal up with that amount of money, and I
Yeah.
really respect him for doing that. And the other thing is,
Mhm.
yeah, El Salvador. Like we saw recently in the last 5 months, the amount of negative press that was aimed at El Salvador, which was always going to happen because when you're undermining some of the major institutions, power institutions in the world, like the IMF, you're going to get blowback from the media that
Mm.
represent those people. And I think now that El Salvador has turned a corner, they're in profit, they're making money from their citizenship program with Bitcoin. I mean, like he's got a 92% approval rating, Bukele, and it's just incredible. It's just so nice to see how a country can actually run when you've got someone that actually wants to represent and do well for that country. That is for me
Mm.
just so refreshing to see when you look around at every other country and you look at all these leaders with like 20% approval ratings who aren't working for you. They got people that they work for, and it's
Yeah.
just so refreshing to see someone that's actually doing that. And I say that as a libertarian as well, as someone who really doesn't believe in a nation state, but
Mm.
ultimately it is just refreshing to see someone that actually wants to represent the people. And
Mm.
I just wish them all the best. Like I want to see El Salvador succeed. I'm sure they will, and I think all these other countries are going to have to follow suit because the amount of pressure that's going to start building on them to replicate El Salvador's model, if it works so well, it's just going to be like they won't be able to ignore it. It's just going to become unavoidable, and those that don't follow it, the pressure is going to become so big.
Mhm.
They're going to have to. They're going to have to bend the knee. It's an El Salvador MicroStrategy at the moment, forcing that on both for corporate and
Yeah.
state level. It's great to see. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and it's great to hear your enthusiasm. I mean, I think often people observe the Bitcoin space and it's all, it's hard, I think, for them to watch because we're all just so positive. It's like this is going to change the world, and I think those who don't understand it or don't get it are just kind of a bit askance. That whole idea of the fact that the world could change so drastically. It's really hard for them to see that, and it is important to be cautious because things have come out of left field.
Yeah.
Those that understand it really have imagined that it was about to take over the world. I mean, I remembered in 2017 and the price was going up, thinking this was it, the moment everything was going to change. But of course, it doesn't always happen in a straightforward manner. So it's always worth bearing that in mind. But certainly from a fundamental perspective, I think you're absolutely right. And I completely agree with you. And in many respects, as a Bitcoiner myself, it's disappointing when those things come out of left field. It's like, damn it, we were doing really well.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
killed it.
absolutely. And on top of that, I actually was going to put this in my talk, and because you'd think to yourself, like, the way people talk about Bitcoin is like almost the second coming of Christ, right?
Yeah.
So if you're from the outside looking in, this is actually going to be in my talk as well. I can get a touch on this. If you're from the outside looking in, you'll think to yourself, well, if Bitcoin is the second coming of Christ, going to fix every problem in the world, then why is it only after what 15 years still at 8% global adoption? And so, the reasons I explain is because, this is an unprecedented technology. There's nothing before it that is like Bitcoin. And when something like that happens, it takes people time to get used to it. It's the biggest change in money in 2,500 years, biggest change in currency in 1,000 years, and biggest change in transacting in 50 years with, like the way we use currency and bank cards. So for people, there's no precedent. So obviously they're going to approach it a lot slower than other technologies such as tablets and iPhones, which, people can instantly see, oh yeah, that does X, Y, Z. That's similar to a phone, but it's got this additional functionality. And it's got the internet. So for them, and also, so as well as, being more familiar with what the product would do, you've also got the fact that you're not risking your life savings in a new innovation. If you buy a tablet, you're risking what, £600, and even if it breaks, you got warranty. Whereas with Bitcoin, it's a much bigger ask for people to put their entire net worth into something that is, been up to, I would say, last 5 years an experimental stage, really. But I think that's going to change so fast now that, it's becoming more and more established, and that can change in a blink of an eye. And I think that's when you hit the early majority stage and we go vertical. Like,
Yeah. Well, I think the analogy you made earlier is perfect. It's like the beginning of the internet, because, a lot of people, I mean, I remember when I was at university in the 90s and one of the lecturers going, oh, the internet, the things you read on the internet. And that was in the 90s. And I hadn't even accessed the internet yet because I didn't have a computer. So I just remember him kind of making this comment going, and of course it piqued my curiosity. It was like, well, what's on the internet that he thinks is so wrong? But of course that was in the 90s. So it was around then. And of course in the 90s, that's when everyone started having mobile phones. And then you kind of had the noughties where that technology was kind of taking off, but it wasn't really until 2008 when the iPhone came out, and it just kind of made the internet accessible to everyone in their pocket. And then, a couple of years later, YouTube. It was when you really make those technologies accessible to the average person, and you don't have to explain how it works behind the scenes. It's just, you do this and it does that, and that's when it takes off by magic. And I think that's really what we're all waiting for. We're waiting for those usable innovations, which people are still working on, but admittedly, still have a way to go before they take off. But it's the people who are thinking about it and working on it behind the scenes who see the potential. They know, and it's when you understand the vision but it's not quite there yet, where it's a real opportunity. It's like going around to see a rundown house and dismissing it because you can't see the vision. But of course someone comes along with a bit of creative ability and transforms the rooms with the right coat of paint or whatever, and suddenly everybody wants it. So I think that's what we're waiting for. We can see that's what's on the horizon. That's what we're waiting for.
100%.
Fantastic. Yeah. So, and the thing is, that's the thing about this event. We're going to have these talks in the morning in order to help explain some of these concepts to people, but also, by gathering everyone together. I mean, we've got maximum capacity of 500, and 100 VIP tickets have already been sold out. So it's only the free event tickets that are still available. But a big part of the attraction is you're actually meeting people person to person, where we can kind of have these conversations one-to-one and start to explore some of these topics. And of course, after your talk, there'll be opportunity for people to ask questions. I'm not sure we're going to have time to hear anyone else. There's going to be so much that they can ask you, Ed, with all this amazing information.
I'll happily take any questions, and I'll also be milling around all day. So if people want to talk to me, more than happy to talk further on anything. Anything you want.
Yeah, brilliant, excellent. And so moving on to my next question. I mean, how was it that you ended up being invited to the Bitcoin Fest in the first place? What was your introduction?
Right. So I know a guy called Nindy in the space. I think a lot of people know Nindy, and he's just he's an amazing networker in the Bitcoin space. He seems to know
Known and never
absolutely
seen.
everyone. Yeah, but he's great. He just brings everyone together. He knows everyone.
Yeah.
He's a person that just sort of makes everything happen. But yeah, he said to me, "Would you like to come speak at the Bitcoin Fest?" And to be honest, I've actually turned down quite a few invitations because I've had stuff going on outside of Bitcoin that I've had to deal with. And but this time I was like, do you know what? I really want to get back into getting out there, doing public talks, and just spreading the gospel, and preaching about Bitcoin because I think, and I
The
think the
vicar of
timing's
Bitcoin.
just, and the timing is just so good. It's, I think this is the last point before Bitcoin really goes mainstream. So I think the timing is really great for people to make an investment. And I think, even from here, I could see Bitcoin. Yeah, I have no magic ball, and obviously there's no bottom to how much fiat can be printed. But I think I think you can still truly make life changing gains right now in Bitcoin. Whereas I think maybe 3 or 4 years time, those gains aren't going to be as big. Like when the market cap starts getting up into the 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 trillion mark. I think that's where the gains slow down. But I still think now you can still make life changing gains in Bitcoin and protect yourself from what is coming. Like the unprecedented collapse of all fiat currencies at the same time, which has never happened before in human history. So I think in terms of like protecting yourself and prospering, there's no better time than right now to learn about it and just tell people it's not. You're still technically an early adopter if you get in at this point. That's the stage we're at, and I think once people understand that, it's like they'll have more. The more you understand about Bitcoin, the more commitment you have to making that investment and holding it long term. And I think, having that commitment is where people succeed. It's the people that, don't have that commitment, that flip flop, that then start to buy at the high, sell at the low. Whereas if you have pure conviction, holding long term, you normally come out better than most.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I can attest to that. Having been around long enough and listened to other people's shenanigans, it's like, no, why did I sell then? It's people who bought £1 and sold at 30, and it's just like, oh no.
Yeah. Oh no, I even look back at things that I purchased for Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think I remember buying a paper wallet, a device that created paper wallets, which was like an old form of a hardware wallet, but a paper in paper form. And I bought that for a third of a Bitcoin. And it's just like this little device which would probably cost like, I don't know, £50 to make or something. I don't know. And now I'm just thinking that's 20,000 that I'm never gonna see again. But
Yeah.
it's crazy. I think the funny story I have though, like when I first got into Bitcoin, I was 30, and one of my friends baked me a birthday cake, and to thank them because they made it in the shape of a Bitcoin. I absolutely loved it. So to thank them, I gave them half a Bitcoin because at the time it's like
Present
£30.
of
I'm
a
like, okay,
lifetime.
yeah, I'm like, here's £30, thank you. And now they still got it. And it's 30,000. It's like, it's a gift that
Amazing.
keeps on giving, it's
Yeah.
but again,
Yeah.
that's just, but then again, when people hear that, they think, well, that's crazy. Why am I going to invest in that? But that's the whole point of the talk, it's, even though it's gone up that much, it still can go up a lot.
Yeah.
It's unprecedented, really.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I could tell a few stories like that as well. Ah,
Yeah.
fantastic. All right then. So talking about how you first got into Bitcoin, how did you find out about it? Because obviously you were one of the few people who knew about it really early. So how did you first become involved in Bitcoin?
So I used to work in IT actually, and
Hmm.
I was never. I mean, I respect and love IT. I love what it does for the world, but I was never my passion. Like I studied IT and business IT at university, and that was it really. And I tried to pursue a career, and I couldn't learn stuff. I thought I had a problem with my learning, but it's just that I just wasn't interested enough. And then one day I'm just at work and I'm looking out the window, and this is actually 2 weeks before. This is after the financial crisis, and I was looking out the window. And I'm like, I got to do something different. Like I'm not enjoying this career. I got to find
Hmm.
something I love, and I didn't know what it was at the time. And
Mm.
this was 2010, 2 years after the banking crisis. And then one day at lunchtime, I just read an article on the banker bailouts, and I was like, "What the hell is what? What the hell happened?" Is it Sir Fred Goodwood? I can't remember his name, the RBS
Mm.
CEO.
Mm.
he got like a massive pay package after getting a taxpayer bailout, and I was like, something is massively wrong here. And shortly after that, I read about fractional reserve banking and quantitative easing. I'm like, no, fractional reserve banking, and I was like, so banks can print money out thinner. And after that, I just consumed every piece of economic article I could find. Most of them
Yeah.
coming from Zero Hedge. Oh my god! And completely went down the rabbit hole until I realized that everything is unsustainable. Like even back in 2013, I was like, "There's no end to the money printing." It was clear
Mm.
to me, like the entire investment thesis for the last since 2010 has purely been built upon the fact that they can never stop printing money. That is just literally the foundational thesis of my entire investing strategy.
Mm.
And so I started off with precious metals, and then when Bitcoin came along, I used to watch Kaiser Report 3 times a week. And I actually heard Max Kaiser and Stacey Herbert talk about Bitcoin in 2011, when it was
Mm.
$2. And I completely poo-pooed it at that point. I was like, this sounds crazy. I don't want anything to do with that. And it wasn't until 2013 when he released a video saying how he is a Bitcoin millionaire. And I also read Eric Voorhees' A Libertarian Introduction to Bitcoin, an article he wrote. And it was that article and Max Kaiser that then convinced me to really start making investment in Bitcoin. And it wasn't until the first time I properly used Bitcoin was to transfer money from Mt. Gox to an exchange called BTCE at the time, which I
Wow.
think was a Bulgarian exchange, and to buy some Litecoin. This is the kind of stuff you did back in the day. And it wasn't until I made that transaction, it took 3 minutes and cost a fraction of the cost of a bank transfer. I was like, that is it. Like my jaw was on the floor. And that was the moment it hit me. And this is about 2013, I think, about that time. And I was like, this is it. This is going to wipe the floor with the banks. This is going to change the world. And my life was never the same. I didn't go quite as much as Andres Antonopoulos, because I remember he does stories about how he just stopped eating and stuff. But I was
Really?
close to that. I was close to that. It consumed every thought I had for just weeks and months on end.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Here
that's
you
and
are.
this. Yeah, sorry.
No. I was about to say, and here you are. I mean, it's an amazing story. It's one of the reasons why I include that question in this series, because I think people's stories of how they became interested in Bitcoin, especially when most of the world is poo-pooing it, I think it says a lot about the person who understands and makes the choice at that point in time. And so, people, it's like their origin story, your introduction to Bitcoin. I just think it's really, really interesting. So yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. It's
Yeah,
great.
no worries.
So yeah, final question. So what would you say you're most looking forward to coming up to this event? Obviously, we've got a football match in the afternoon, got all the speakers in the morning, got loads of other Bitcoiners to chat to. What do you think will be your highlight?
I mean, yeah, it'd be great to catch up with everybody who, like, obviously yourself, everyone that I've met at other conferences throughout the years, all the talkers. I generally just love chatting to people who are interested in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
People who are people who just generally are inquisitive. You
Mm,
can chat to a lot of people. You get a lot of people that instantly poo-poo it without understanding. But I have a lot of respect for the people that don't understand it, but they at least they have the desire to understand it and to learn. And they
yeah.
won't just outright dismiss it as something just because they don't understand it. So I love hanging out with those people. They're the people that I want to help, the ones that want to help themselves, like the ones that want to learn.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just love talking to people who take a genuine interest in Bitcoin, want to learn about it. So I'm looking forward to chatting to everybody there. Hopefully I can provide a lot of value with my talk and just help people understand why it's still a great investment right now. And meet all the organizers, which who I've never met before. So it'd be great to meet them as well. And
Yeah.
it's just going to be great, have a couple of drinks and just,
No, I think
and
no, it will be
just,
fantastic. I mean, there's a few of us that often go to conferences that know each other now, and I think when you've got a core of people that know each other, and also I think, by having these interviews and allowing people to witness some of our conversations who may not know who we are, or who haven't been to, some of these events, it kind of gives them a taste of what that interaction would be like. Because, people who might have heard about Bitcoin but have never been to an event like this may be a little bit intimidated. It's just like, oh, they're all going to think, I'm just curious, and they've all been in it for for ages, and so what they have to say to me, and it's not, we all started somewhere, and it all began, as you said, with inquisitiveness, and yeah, we're all inquisitive. That's what got us here in the first
Yeah.
place. So if you're
And like,
interested.
yeah, and that's the main thing. As long as someone has genuine interest in want to learn, like that's who everyone wants to help. That's
Yeah.
yeah, it's great. It doesn't matter how much of a gap there is. If there's that desire, that's great. And they're serious about it. They want to learn. Like, and yeah, that for me is yeah. And the thing is, like, what other time do you get access to so many people with a lot of experience in Bitcoin?
Yeah.
That's a lot of value right there for anyone who's coming along. There's a huge amount of value available here. A lot of information that can help you massively. So yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I think that's a great way to wrap up this interview. So, any of you who are watching this video, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please subscribe. We are planning on live streaming the event. So, if you can't actually make it in person, hopefully you'll be able to get something out of it by watching on the live stream. And yeah, so thank you ever so much again, Ed. Really looking forward to seeing you again on the 6th of April. And you guys on the channels will have another interview tomorrow. So check it out then. All right. Till next time then. Bye.
Thank you.